Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I will be presenting an important topic in abdominal anatomy, which is peritoneum. So in this video we will discuss what a peritoneum is, parietal and the visceral peritoneum, the peritoneal cavity, intraperitoneal and extraperitoneal organ, the primary and the secondary retroperitoneal organs, and finally retroperitoneal and subperitoneal structures. So let's get started. So the peritoneum is the slippery serous membrane that line the abdominopelvic cavity and invests the viscera. So this blue color is the peritoneum, which covers the abdominal wall as well as some pelvic wall. So it has, similar to the other serous membrane, it has two main layers: the parietal peritoneum, which is from the outer line, that lining the abdominal wall, and the visceral peritoneum, which covering the organs. So the outer layer, the parietal peritoneum, which is the outer layer, lines the abdominopelvic wall. Like the area of the wall, it lines the parietal peritoneum is supplied by the somatic nerve supply, blood, lymphatic, and vasculature, which is similar to the abdominal wall that lines, the blood supply, this innervation, the venous drainage, and the lymphatic drainage as well as. So similar to the overlying skin, the parietal peritoneum is sensitive to touch, pressure, pain, and the temperature change. Pain in the parietal peritoneum is well localized, except the parietal peritoneum located inferior to the central part of the diaphragm, which is supplied by the phrenic nerve. So actually phrenic nerve is somatic nerve, but it is sensory fiber into the spinal cord at C3 up to C5, and the brain interprets this pain as coming from the skin of the shoulder, not from the abdomen, because similarly from the shoulder areas, sensory fibers get into C3 and C5. So this kind of pain is called the referred pain. So the visceral peritoneum is the inner layer that directly covers the abdominal organs such as stomach, liver, spleen, and intestine, and it receives blood supply from the same vessels that supply the organ itself. For example, the visceral peritoneum covering the stomach receives blood from the gastric and gastro-omental arteries, which are also the arteries of the stomach. Unlike the parietal peritoneum, the visceral peritoneum is not sensitive to touch, pressure, temperature, but it is sensitive to stretch and chemical irritation. This is why visceral pain is usually poorly localized and felt as dull, vague discomfort. The peritoneal cavity is just a potential space between the parietal and the visceral peritoneum. It contains the peritoneal fluid, which lubricates the surface and allows smooth movement of the abdominal organ. However, infections can be just spread to this potential space in the case of, for example, ruptured appendicitis, the perforated ulcer, or bowel perforation. In this case, they can spread throughout the space and cause peritonitis, which is a serious medical condition. Intraperitoneal and extraperitoneal organs. The intraperitoneal organs are completely covered by the visceral peritoneum, example like stomach, liver, spleen, and the extraperitoneal organs are located outside the peritoneal cavity. They are only covered, or they are partially covered from a certain aspect by the parietal peritoneum, even not by the visceral peritoneum. So extraperitoneal organs may be divided as retroperitoneal organs and subperitoneal organs. So we'll just discuss soon about what retroperitoneal and what's the difference between retroperitoneal and subperitoneal organs are. So peritoneum, which is the blue color, so structures which are just found posterior to outside the peritoneum, they are called extraperitoneal organs in general. So certain structures, you can see certain structures are within the blue color, meaning within the peritoneum, including, for example, this is the ileum. I think this is the jejunum. Okay. So, and not only these structures like the stomach, the spleen, the liver. Most of part of the liver is intraperitoneal except the berry area, we will discuss in another video. So these are just the extraperitoneal organs, and within the blue color or within the peritoneum they are called intraperitoneal organs. So the extraperitoneal organs further can be divided into primary retroperitoneal or secondary retroperitoneal. Meaning the primary retroperitoneals are organs developed behind the peritoneum from the beginning, meaning they were developed as extraperitoneal starting from the embryonic period. But secondary retroperitoneal organs were originally intraperitoneal during the development, later become fixed to the posterior abdominal wall and lost their mesenteries, like for example the pancreas. Here is the picture which summarizes the primary and secondary retroperitoneal organs. The primary peritoneal organs including the suprarenal gland, kidney, inferior vena cava, aorta. These are primary retroperitoneal organs, meaning they were developed as extraperitoneal organs starting from the embryonic period. But the secondary retroperitoneal organs, they were developed as intraperitoneal organs, but in the late age, they attach to the posterior abdominal wall and lose their mesentery and become extraperitoneal. So this including the ascending colon, the descending colon, yeah, and the duodenum, most part of the duodenum, the pancreas. These are secondary retroperitoneal organs. And the other is retroperitoneal and the subperitoneal. Retroperitoneal means the extraperitoneal organs which are found posterior to the peritoneum, including the kidney, the ureter, inferior vena cava, and aorta, which has been removed from here. These are retroperitoneal, meaning they are found posterior to the peritoneum. But there are certain structures which are the subperitoneal. Okay? Subperitoneals are below the peritoneum, including the pelvic viscera, including uterus and the urinary bladder. These are subperitoneal organs. Okay, so when we say retroperitoneal, those extraperitoneal organs found posterior to the peritoneum, they are called retroperitoneal, and the subperitoneal, which structure found, they are extraperitoneal structure which found below the peritoneum, they are subperitoneal structures. Okay, thank you for watching this presentation on anatomy of the peritoneum. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a good time.